Let us now focus on YOLO. YOLO is composed of a single network as opposed to RCNN, for which the region proposals, the feature extraction, and the classification were performed by different learning algorithms. YOLO works as follows. The input image is first divided into a grid of size S by S. For each cell in the grid, the algorithm predicts B bounding boxes whose center is in the cell, together with confidence scores, estimated probabilities that an object is indeed in these boxes. Besides, for each cell, a class probability vector of size C is output, corresponding to the probability that an object of a given class can be found in a cell. Here is an illustration. The input image is on the left. Two parts of the network are responsible for estimating the bounding boxes and the confidence scores on one hand, and estimating the class probabilities on the other hand. Major differences with RCNN are the fact that this network is trained end-to-end and that there is more consistency among the detected objects due to the class probability vector, which is output for each cell instead of each bounding box. YOLO still lags behind state-of-the-art detection systems in accuracy because while it can quickly identify objects in images, it struggles to precisely localize some objects, especially small ones. Larger errors appear when using YOLO compared to fast RCNN. You see in particular that YOLO struggles to localize precisely the object in an image. Here, an error of the localization type means that the intersection over union measure between the predicting bounding box and the true target is below 10%. Here are some examples of object detection using YOLO. For several elements, you see that the localizations of bounding boxes are not very accurate. Besides, if you look at the second image of the second row, you see an incorrect classification. Finally, several objects are not identified at all in these images because they are too small. Indeed, remember that the class probability vector is computed for each cell in the grid and not for all bounding boxes, which may prevent to detect small objects. SSD is another famous CNN architecture used for object detection. Similarly to YOLO, there is no region proposal. Regions or equivalently bounding boxes are created via a neural network as in YOLO. SSD uses convolutional layers at the end of the network, contrary to YOLO, which uses fully connected layers. It helps reducing the overall number of parameters and allow SSD to incorporate more convolutional layers of different sizes, which make the network able to classify objects of small sizes, contrary to YOLO. Indeed, here, several grids of different sizes are used to discretize the image, and the class probabilities are computed for each bounding box and not only for each grid cell. Here are some examples of object detection using SSD. Results are more accurate than for YOLO. In particular, in the top right image, you see that the algorithm is able to identify objects of different sizes. You can use a more complex pipeline in order to identify objects or animals in images. Here is an example of such a pipeline, which incorporates part localization, alignment, and classification. This architecture is called Deep LAC for localization, alignment, and classification. Here, the goal is to identify birds. The method proceeds by first localizing the head of the bird in the input image, then aligning the head with some given head templates, and finally using a more classical classifier to detect the bird pieces. From a more general perspective, annotations are not easy to collect, and the previous architecture have difficulty in scaling up and handling many types of fine-grained classes. One way to address these problems is by using a hierarchy of classifiers, as we've seen at the beginning of this section. You can also combine co-segmentation and alignment in a discriminative mixture to generate parts for facilitating fine-grained classification. Unsupervised selective search can also generate object proposals, which can be used with a full image in order to generate better part proposals.